My favorite Uncle John who taught me to ride a bike, slept my mom, and eliminated my dad. My name is Amber, and 3 days ago I was cleaning out my childhood, home for the estate sale when I found a shoebox under my mom's bed that made me question everything I've ever known about my family. I was supposed to be sorting through her jewelry. Mom passed away 6 months ago from cancer, and I'd been putting off this whole process because honestly, who wants to pack up their dead mother's life into cardboard boxes? But my lease was up and I needed the money from selling the house, so there I was, on my hands and knees, pulling out dusty storage containers from under the bed she died in. That's when I saw it. A Nike shoebox, which was weird because my mom never wore sneakers. She was a heels woman through and through, even to the grocery store. I pulled it out and the weight felt wrong. Too heavy for shoes. I opened it. Inside were receipts. Dozens of them. All printed on that thermal paper that fades over time, but these were still readable. Purchase after purchase from some medical supply website I'd never heard of. Sodium fluoroacetate. Thallium sulfate. Other chemical names I had to Google on my phone right there on the bedroom floor. Rat poison. All of it. Industrial strength rat poison. The dates ranged from March 2015 to November 2015. My dad died in December 2015 in what everyone said was a car accident on Route 9. My hands started shaking so hard I dropped the receipts. They scattered across the hardwood floor like guilty confetti, and that's when I saw the envelope underneath them. Cream-colored, expensive paper. The kind you use for wedding invitations. I opened it and pulled out photos. Polaroids, actually, which felt weirdly vintage and deliberate. The first photo was my mom and my Uncle John, kissing, her hand on his chest, his hand in her hair. They were in our kitchen. I recognized the yellow curtains my dad had hung the summer before he died. The second photo was worse. Same kitchen. My mom sitting on the counter. Uncle John between her legs. Both of them smiling at the camera like they were on vacation instead of destroying my family. There were 12 photos total. Each one felt like a knife. I sat there on that floor for probably an hour, just staring at those photos, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Uncle John had been at Dad's funeral. He'd given the eulogy. He'd cried. He'd hugged me and told me that my father was the best man he'd ever known, his best friend since college, and that he'd take care of me and Mom no matter what. He'd been at our house every week after Dad died, helping with bills, fixing things around the house, teaching me to drive because I'd just turned 16 and Dad was supposed to be the one to do that. Uncle John had taken me to get my license. He'd been there for my high school graduation. He'd helped me move into my college dorm, and the whole time, apparently he'd been sleeping with my mom. The whole time, apparently he'd helped her murder my dad. I threw up right there on the bedroom floor, just leaned over and emptied my stomach onto the hardwood. When there was nothing left, I sat back against the bed and called the only person I could think of. My best friend Riley answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? Can you come over? My voice sounded strange, hollow. Like right now? Are you okay? You sound weird. I just need you to come over, please. She heard something in my tone because she didn't ask any more questions. I'm leaving now. Riley lived 20 minutes away, but she made it in 12. I heard her car pull up, heard her footsteps on the porch, and then she was pushing open the front door that I'd left unlocked. Amber? She found me still sitting on the floor, surrounded by photos and receipts and my own vomit. Oh my god, what happened? I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the evidence scattered around me. Riley picked up one of the photos. Her face went pale. Is that your mom and Uncle John? Yeah, she picked up one of the receipts. Read it. Looked at me. What is sodium fluoro whatever? Rat poison. Why would your mom? She stopped. I watched her face as she put it together. The receipts from 2015. The photos. My dad's death in December 2015. Oh my god, Amber, oh my god! The car accident was a lie, I said. My voice still sounded wrong, detached. Like I was narrating someone else's life. She poisoned him. They poisoned him. Riley sat down next to me, carefully avoiding the vomit. We need to call the police. And tell them what? My mom's dead. I can't prosecute a dead woman, but Uncle John what? He's in these photos, sure, but his name isn't on any of the receipts. A decent lawyer would argue he had no idea what Mom was doing, that maybe she was the jealous one, maybe she killed Dad to be with John, and John was just an innocent affair partner. That's insane. Is it? I picked up one of the receipts. All of these are in her name, her credit card, shipped to this address. There's nothing here that directly ties John to the murder except the affair, and last time I checked, adultery isn't the same as conspiracy to commit murder. Riley was quiet for a long moment. So what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I thought about my dad, really thought about him for the first time in years. I'd been 16 when he died, at that age where you're kind of self-absorbed and your parents are just annoying obstacles to your social life. I'd been mad at him that last month because he wouldn't let me go to a concert with my boyfriend. We'd fought about it at dinner the week before he died. The last thing I'd said to him was, I hate you, when he grounded me for sneaking out. And then he was gone, and I never got to take it back. The funeral was closed casket. They said the accident was too severe, that it was better to remember him as he was. I'd accepted that explanation. Everyone had. Why wouldn't we? People die in car accidents every day, but now I knew the truth. There was no accident. My dad had been systematically poisoned for 9 months. He'd been getting sicker and sicker, and we'd all thought it was stress from work. He'd lost weight. He'd been tired all the time. He'd started having tremors in his hands. Mom had taken him to doctors. She'd been so concerned, so worried. I remembered her sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook, tracking his symptoms, researching possible causes. She'd known exactly what was causing them because she was the one doing it. And when the poison finally killed him and they found him unresponsive in his car on the side of the highway, everyone just assumed his heart had given out and he'd crashed. The coroner ruled it cardiac arrest. Case closed. I need to see the autopsy report, I said suddenly. Riley looked at me. What? Dad's autopsy report? If they did one, they must have done one if he died and they needed to determine cause of death for the insurance, right? I guess? But how are you going to get that? I'm his daughter, his only surviving family member. I have a right to request it. That was the first action I took. The first step in what would become a 6-week obsession with uncovering exactly what happened to my father. I called the medical examiner's office the next morning. The woman on the phone was sympathetic but firm. Yes, they still had the file. Yes, I could request a copy as next of kin. No, it wouldn't be quick. There was a process, paperwork, a waiting period. I filled out every form they sent me. I paid the processing fee, and then I waited. While I waited, I did something else. I called Uncle John. Amber. He sounded happy to hear from me. Why wouldn't he? As far as he knew, I was just his dead best friend's daughter, the girl he'd helped raise after her father's tragic death. How are you doing? How's the house sorting going? It's going, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Actually, I found some of mom's old stuff, and it got me thinking about dad. I realized I don't know much about his life before I was born. You guys were college roommates, right? Best years of my life, John said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Your dad and I got into so much trouble back then. I'd love to hear about it. Do you want to grab coffee sometime this week? I could use the distraction from all this estate stuff. We made plans to meet at a cafe near his office on Wednesday. That gave me 3 days to prepare. I spent those 3 days doing research. I started with the poison, sodium fluoroacetate and thallium sulfate. I read medical journals. I watched videos. I learned that both substances cause symptoms that mimic natural illness, heart problems, neurological issues, digestive distress. If administered in small doses over time, they could kill someone slowly while looking like natural causes or stress-related illness. I also learned that they're detectable in autopsy toxicology reports. If someone had bothered to look, the question was, had anyone looked? Wednesday came. I met Uncle John at the cafe. He hugged me when he saw me, and I had to force myself not to flinch. This man had been a constant in my life for 6 years after Dad died. He'd been at every birthday, every Christmas, every graduation. He'd been there when Mom got her cancer diagnosis. He'd helped me take care of her through chemo. He'd held my hand at her funeral, and the whole time, he'd been keeping this secret. We ordered coffee and sat at a corner table. John smiled at me. So what do you want to know about your old man? I pulled out my phone and pretended to look at notes. Well, I was going through Mom's stuff and I found some old photos. You, Dad, and Mom at various parties and things. It looked like you all hung out a lot even after college. We did. Your parents were my best friends. Were you at their wedding? Best man. His smile widened. Your dad was so nervous he dropped the ring. I had to catch it before it rolled into a grate. That's funny. Mom never told me that story. Something flickered across his face. Just for a second. Well, your mom liked to remember things her own way. Interesting. What does that mean? Nothing. Just that she had a habit of editing memories to be more romantic than they really were. She always said she and your dad fell in love at first sight. But the truth is, he had to ask her out 5 times before she said yes. I filed that information away. When did you get so close with Mom? After Dad died? Before, actually. I mean, we were always close because of your dad, but she and I really connected over the years. She was easy to talk to. Yeah, she was. I paused. Can I ask you something kind of heavy? Of course. Did you notice Dad getting sick before he died? John's expression shifted, became more somber. I did. We all did. He was having a rough time at work, and I think the stress was killing him. Interesting choice of words. Mom was really worried about him, I continued. She took him to a bunch of doctors. She did everything she could. Do you think the doctors missed something? Like, could there have been something wrong that they didn't catch? John leaned back in his chair. Why are you asking this? Because I'm 22 and I just lost both my parents. Dad at 16, Mom at 21. I'm trying to understand if there's something genetic I should worry about. Dad died of a heart attack and Mom had cancer. Should I be getting screened for things? The lie came easily. Too easily, John's face softened. Oh, Amber, I don't think you need to worry about that. Your dad's death was an accident and your mom's cancer was environmental, not genetic. You're going to be fine, but Dad was having heart problems before the accident, right? That's what caused the crash? The doctors thought so, yes. Did they do an autopsy? They did. And it showed heart failure? John shifted in his seat. Amber, why are you digging into this now? Your dad died 7 years ago. Because I want to understand what happened to him. What happened is that he had a heart attack while driving and crashed his car. It was tragic, but it was an accident. Did you read the autopsy report? No, but your mom did. She told me what it said. Of course she did. I changed tactics. How often were you at our house before Dad died? I don't know. Few times a month. Your dad and I would watch football together, or I'd come over for dinner. What about after Dad died? More often. Your mom needed help and you were just a kid. Were you there every week? Most weeks, yeah. And you and Mom got close during that time. It wasn't a question. John's jaw tightened slightly. We supported each other through grief. Right, grief. I let the word hang in the air between us. John studied me across the table. Is there something specific you want to ask me, Amber? This was it. The moment. I could confront him right here with what I knew, watch him squirm, demand answers, or I could keep playing dumb and gather more information. I chose the latter. No, I said, forcing a smile. I'm just processing a lot. Losing Mom brought up all these feelings about losing Dad, and I guess I'm trying to make sense of everything. John's expression relaxed. That's completely normal. Grief isn't linear. We talked for another 20 minutes about safe topics. His job, my plans now that college was done, the housing market, and the whole time I watched him, looking for cracks in his facade, signs of guilt or remorse. There were none. He was perfectly comfortable, perfectly normal. Either he was innocent or he was a sociopath. When we parted ways, he hugged me again and told me to call him if I needed anything. I smiled and said I would. Then I went home and threw up again. The autopsy report arrived 4 days later in a manila envelope marked confidential. My hands shook as I opened it. The report was 30 pages long, full of medical terminology I had to look up, but the important parts were clear enough. Cause of death, acute myocardial infarction, heart attack. Contributing factors, chronic stress, poor diet, lack of exercise. No toxicology screen had been performed. That was the key. They'd looked at a 38-year-old man who crashed his car and had a history of stress, and they'd assumed heart attack without digging deeper. Why would they? There was no reason to suspect foul play, but toxicology screens can be performed posthumously if you exhume the body. I sat with that thought for a long time. Did I really want to dig up my father? Did I really want to know for certain? Yes, I did. But exhumation requires legal grounds. You can't just decide to dig up your parent because you found some receipts and photos in a shoebox. You need cause, evidence, something concrete enough to convince a judge. I needed more. I went back to the house and searched every inch of my mother's bedroom. I found journals in her nightstand drawer, 10 years worth of them, leather-bound and filled with her careful handwriting. I started with 2015. January 2015. I can't do this anymore. Every day with him feels like dying slowly. John says we'll figure something out. He says to be patient. March 2015. Ordered the first supplies. John helped me find the website. He says it needs to look like I'm doing it alone, that we need to be careful. I'm scared but also relieved. Finally, there's a way out. May 2015. He's getting sicker. I feel guilty but also free. Is that terrible? John says it's not. He says we deserve happiness. August 2015. The doctor can't figure out what's wrong with him. They're running more tests. John says not to worry, that they won't find anything unusual. I added more to his coffee this morning. November 2015. Soon. It'll be over soon. And then John and I can finally be together the way we're supposed supposed to be. I read every entry, every calculated dose, every lie she told to doctors, every moment she spent playing the concerned wife while poisoning her husband, and in every other entry, there was John, encouraging her, planning with her, being careful to keep his distance publicly while privately orchestrating my father's murder. The journal was evidence, real evidence. Combined with the receipts and photos, it might be enough. I took photos of every page with my phone. Then I called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Patricia Chen, and she specialized in wrongful death cases. She listened to my story without interrupting, looked at the evidence I'd photographed, and finally sat back in her chair. This is complicated, she said, but it's enough for an exhumation, right? Maybe. The journal is compelling, but defense would argue it's just the private thoughts of a woman who's now dead and can't defend herself. She might have been fantasizing. She might have been mentally ill. She bought rat poison. For rats, presumably. Do you have any evidence she actually administered it to your father? I didn't. Just her word in a journal. What about Uncle John? He's mentioned throughout. Doesn't that make him an accomplice? Patricia tapped her pen against her desk. It might. But here's the problem. Your mother is dead. We can't prosecute her. And while the journal mentions John encouraging her and helping her plan, there's no direct evidence he purchased anything or administered anything or even knew for certain what she was doing. A good defense attorney would argue he thought they were just venting frustrations, that he had no idea she'd actually go through with it, so he gets away with it. I didn't say that. I said it's complicated. Patricia leaned forward. If we can get the body exhumed and toxicology shows poison, that changes everything. That proves your mother actually did it, which gives weight to the journal entries. And if the journal entries are credible, then John's involvement becomes credible too. So we need to exhume Dad. Yes, but that requires a court order, which requires probable cause. These journals might be enough, but it's going to be a fight. I'll fight. And I did. Patricia filed a motion for exhumation based on new evidence suggesting foul play. Uncle John's lawyer fought it, arguing I was a grieving daughter looking for someone to blame for my losses. The judge reviewed the evidence in chambers. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of waiting and wondering and barely sleeping. 6 weeks of Uncle John calling me, asking if I was okay, saying he was worried about me. I stopped answering. Finally, Patricia called. We got the order. Exhumation is scheduled for next month, I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I sat on my floor and cried for my dad, who'd been murdered by the woman he loved and the friend he trusted. I cried for 16-year-old me, who told him she hated him the week before he died. I cried for all the years I'd believed the lie. The exhumation was done early on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't allowed to be there, but Patricia was. She called me 3 hours later. They found it, she said. Both poisons. Elevated levels in bone and hair samples. Amber, your father was definitely poisoned. The police arrested Uncle John that afternoon. He tried to run. Actually got in his car and made it to the county line before state troopers pulled him over. They found a passport and $10,000 cash in his trunk. The trial took 8 months. I attended every day. I watched Uncle John sit at the defense table in his suit, looking nothing like the man who'd taught me to ride a bike or driven me to college. I watched him cry when they played recordings of his phone calls with my mom, planning my father's death. I watched him try to claim he'd been manipulated, that he'd been in love and hadn't thought clearly. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, fraud. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. When they let him out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he looked at me. Really looked at me, and in that moment I saw something I'd never seen before. He was scared. Good, I thought. Now he knows how Dad felt. The house sold 3 weeks after the trial ended. I couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't walk through rooms where my mother had plotted murder and my father had slowly died. I took the money and moved across the country to Seattle, as far from that town as I could get. I started therapy. Lots of therapy. Turns out discovering your mom murdered your dad and your uncle helped does a number on your ability to trust people. Riley moved to Seattle with me. She got a job at a tech company and we rented an apartment together near the water. Some nights we'd sit on the balcony and she'd let me talk through everything until the words ran out. Do you think they loved each other? She asked me once. Your mom and John? I thought about that a lot. I think they loved the idea of each other, the forbidden romance, the secret affair. But real love doesn't murder someone's father and lie about it for 7 years. Real love doesn't teach a girl to drive when you helped kill the person who was supposed to teach her. Do you hate them? I don't know what I feel. That was true. Hate seemed too simple for what I felt. It was more like grief layered on top of grief, betrayal mixed with loss, anger stirred through with exhaustion. 6 months after the trial, I got a letter from Uncle John. The prison had forwarded it with a note asking if I wanted to receive correspondence from him. I almost threw it away unread, but I didn't. I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on yellow legal paper. He apologized. He explained. He rationalized. He said he'd loved my mom since college, but she'd chosen my dad instead. And he'd spent 20 years watching them together, wanting what they had. He said when my mom came to him unhappy in her marriage, something broke inside him. He said he'd convinced himself my dad was a bad husband, that he deserved what happened. He said he'd been in love and hadn't thought about consequences. He said he was sorry. The last paragraph stuck with me. I know you'll never forgive me and I don't expect you to, but I need you to know that every time I looked at you after your father died, I saw my own guilt reflected back. You looked so much like him. Same eyes, same smile. I'd helped kill that man and then I had to watch his daughter grow up without him. If I believed in hell, I'd say I've been living in it for 7 years. Prison is just making it official. I read that letter 5 times. Then I wrote back. My letter was shorter. 1 page. I told him I didn't forgive him and never would. I told him my father was a good man who'd loved his family, and whatever problems existed in my parents' marriage didn't justify murder. I told him I hoped he lived a very long life in prison, long enough to fully understand what he'd taken from me and from my dad. I told him to never contact me again. He didn't. A year after the trial, I went to visit my dad's grave. I hadn't been since the exhumation, hadn't wanted to see the disturbed earth and remember what they'd had to do to prove the truth, but the ground had healed now. Fresh grass covered the spot. Someone had left flowers. I wondered if it was my grandmother on my dad's side, the only family I had left who'd known him. I sat down in the grass and talked to him, told him everything that happened, told him I was sorry for being a bratty teenager, told him I wished I'd known him as an adult, wished he could have met the person I became. I think you'd be proud of me, I said. I didn't let them get away with it. I fought for you. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees around the cemetery. I like to think it was him telling me he heard me. I miss you, Dad, I whispered. Every single day. I left flowers on his grave, white roses, his favorite. As I was walking back to my car, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Amber? A woman's voice, older, uncertain. Yes. My name is Margaret. I was friends with your mother. I heard about what happened, about the trial. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say to that. Margaret continued. I'm calling because I found something. A letter your mother wrote me before she died. She never sent it, but I found it in her things when I was cleaning. I think you should have it. What does it say? I'd rather not read it over the phone. Can I send it to you? I gave her my Seattle address, my heart pounding. What could my mom possibly have written that mattered now? The letter arrived 4 days later. Same cream-colored expensive paper as the envelope I'd found with the photos. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Margaret, it began. If you're reading this, I'm dead and you found this letter where I hid it, which means you're cleaning out my closet like I asked you to in my will. There's something you need to know. Something I need someone to know before I'm gone. I didn't kill my husband. John did. I know that sounds crazy after everything I wrote in my journals, after all the evidence pointing to me, but it's the truth. John was obsessed with me for years. When my marriage hit a rough patch, he saw an opportunity. He convinced me to have an affair. He love-bombed me, made me feel special, and wanted in ways I hadn't felt in years. And then he started talking about how much better life would be if I wasn't married. At first, I thought he meant divorce. But John didn't want a divorce. He wanted my husband dead. He showed me the journals. He'd been writing them for months in handwriting he'd practiced to match mine. He'd bought the supplies using prepaid cards linked to accounts he'd set up in my name. He'd set up a perfect frame. And then he told me if I didn't go along with it, if I told anyone the truth, he'd make sure those journals and receipts were found and I'd go to prison for a murder I didn't commit. I was trapped. So I played along. I pretended to be grieving wife. I let John help us. I watched him play uncle to my daughter while knowing what he'd done. When I got cancer, I knew I was dying. And I knew that once I was gone, there'd be no one left to stop John. No one who knew the truth except him. So I wrote this letter and hid it. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe they won't. But if they do, please give it to Amber. Please tell my daughter that I loved her father, that I didn't kill him, that I'm sorry for every lie. The affair was real. My guilt about that is real. But the murder? That was all John. I hope she can forgive me someday. If not for lying, then at least for being too weak to tell the truth. Love, Michelle. I read the letter 3 times, my vision blurring with tears. Then I called Patricia. We need to talk, I said. I just got new evidence. Patricia reviewed the letter. DNA testing confirmed it was written in my mother's handwriting, not a forgery. The ink dating showed it had been written around the time of her diagnosis, just like she'd said. But here's the thing about the legal system. Uncle John was already in prison, already convicted. My mother was dead and couldn't be charged. The letter changed the narrative, but not the outcome. What are you saying? I demanded. He gets to sit in prison thinking he protected her, that they were partners? He gets to remember her as his accomplice instead of his victim? Patricia shook her head. Actually, this makes it worse for him. His defense was that he was manipulated by your mother. This letter proves he was the mastermind. I can file for the case to be reopened and for the record to be corrected. It won't change his sentence. He's already serving life, but it will change the story. It will clear your mother's name. She still had an affair. Yes, but she didn't murder anyone. I thought about that for a long time. My mother had betrayed my father, had let herself be seduced by his best friend, had been weak when she should have been strong, but she hadn't killed him. And she lived with the guilt and fear of being blamed for his death for 6 years until cancer killed her too. Do it, I told Patricia. Clear her name. The case was reopened. The evidence was reviewed. The official record was amended to reflect that John acted alone, that my mother had been coerced and framed. The media ran stories about it. Man frames. Dead woman for murder. He committed was the headline I remember most. Uncle John tried to appeal, claiming the letter was a forgery designed to further persecute him. But forensics didn't lie. The letter was genuine. His appeal was denied. I went to see him after that. One time. The prison allowed a supervised visit. I sat across from him with a plexiglass barrier between us, picked up the phone, and waited for him to do the same. He looked older, grayer. Prison had aged him in ways that seemed disproportionate to the 2 years he'd been there. Why did you come? He asked. I wanted you to know that I know the truth now. All of it. Mom's letter. His face went pale. She didn't help you, I continued. She was your victim too. And now everyone knows it. Every guard in this prison. Every inmate. Every person who reads about your case knows you're not just a murderer. You're a coward who killed his best friend and then framed the woman you claim to love. Amber, don't. I came here to tell you that you stole my father from me, but you didn't steal my mother. She loved him. She was weak and stupid and selfish with the affair, but she loved him. And I choose to remember that instead of the lies you made up about her. I hung up the phone and walked out. I never looked back. 3 years have passed since then. I'm 25 now. I have a job at a nonprofit that helps families of murder victims navigate the legal system. I'm using what I learned to help others. Riley and I still live together, though she's dating someone now and will probably move out soon. That's okay. I'm ready to be on my own. I still go to therapy. Probably will for the rest of my life. Trauma doesn't just go away because you solve the mystery or get justice. It stays with you, changes shape, becomes something you carry instead of something that carries you. I visit Dad's grave every year on his birthday. Sometimes I bring flowers. Sometimes I just sit and talk to him. I tell him about my life, about the work I'm doing, about the person I'm becoming. I like to think he can hear me. I like to think he knows I never forgot him. Last month, I got contacted by a woman writing a book about family murders. She wanted to interview me, wanted to include my story. I said no at first, but then I thought about all the other Ambers out there. All the other people whose families have secrets that could destroy them. All the kids who need to know that you can survive the worst betrayal and still build a life worth living. So I said yes. The book comes out next year. I'm using a pseudonym, but my story will be there. The girl who found the receipts. The girl who wouldn't let her father's murder go unsolved. The girl who learned that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. Uncle John is still in prison. He'll die there. I've made peace with that. My mom's name is cleared. Her headstone was updated to reflect the truth. She's buried next to my dad now, the way she wanted to be. I visit them both. And me? I'm okay. Not healed. Not whole. But okay. I found the receipts in a shoebox, and they changed everything. They gave me the truth. They gave me closure. They gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. At 22, I wanted to disappear. At 25, I'm still here. Still fighting. Still living. And that feels like victory enough. Sometimes people ask me if I forgive Uncle John. I don't know how to answer that. Forgiveness feels like too big a concept for what he did. He didn't just kill my father. He stole years from me. Years I could have grieved honestly instead of being lied to. Years my mother spent in fear instead of in peace. But I've stopped stopped letting him take up space in my head. I've stopped wondering what I could have done differently, what signs I missed. I've stopped hating myself for loving him before I knew the truth. The truth is what set me free. Not the justice, not the conviction, not the prison sentence. Just the knowing. Just the certainty that I wasn't crazy. That my instincts were right. That the wrongness I felt had a source and a name. I found the receipts. I solved the mystery. I gave my father the justice he deserved. And now I'm giving myself permission to live the life he wanted for me. That's my story. That's what happened when my favorite uncle, who taught me to ride a bike, killed my dad and tried to frame my mom. It's not a happy story, but